Hi, I'm Douglas Mason, President and CEO of Magnum Gold Corp, MGI and the TSX Venture Exchange. A 2015 drill program on the LH property intersected several high-grade gold intersections, including 11 meters of 20.66 grams per ton gold. Additional drill targets on the LH property have been identified by a 2018 drone airborne magnetic survey to further evaluate a pyrrhotite-enriched gold-bearing system. Please visit our website at magnumgoldcorp.com.
Welcome to the Goddard Report. Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is investigative reporter Bob Mackin, publisher of thebreaker.news. Welcome back to the show, Bob.
Thank you.
More controversial connections to the Chinese government and the civic election in Richmond. What's going on?
Well, it exploded last week when a mysterious WeChat message. WeChat is the Chinese social media platform. You can think of it as a bit of a mix of Twitter and Facebook and Skype, but it's censored. It's censored by the Chinese government. It does have an international version, which isn't censored as much, but it is used by about 1 billion people, they say, and it's very popular in the Chinese community. And it's being used as a vehicle for promoting this civic election. Facebook has been a battleground in previous elections. Well, this is really the coming of age in the Vancouver area for WeChat as a place to reach the Chinese voters who are seen as being very important by various parties. Approximately 1 in 5 people who live in Metro Vancouver is ethnic Chinese. And so there was this message which came from a group by the name of the Canada-Wenzhou Friendship Society. Now, Wenzhou is a city of about $9 million, a city of 9 million people. It's probably worth a lot more than $9 million. And it is a city that is south of Shanghai. It's a port city in Zhejiang province, which is a very industrial province. And the expats from Wenzhou have a society and a business association. They've got a clubhouse in Richmond near Aberdeen Centre. I've gone and knocked on the door there a couple of times and nobody home. And I've also tried them by phone, by email, have not got any comment from them. But they are now under police investigation. The RCMP is looking at it in Richmond, looking at it in Burnaby and Vancouver as well, the police there, because they were offering a $20 quote-unquote transportation subsidy to those who went out and voted in the advance polls as well as the October 20th election day. They gave a list of preferred candidates, candidates who were those who were pleasing the Chinese community in Richmond, Burnaby, and Vancouver. A couple of candidates from Vancouver for mayor, Wei Young of the Coalition Vancouver Party and Fred Harding of the Vancouver First Party were a couple who were recommended. For Richmond, the mayoral candidate Hong Guo, who we talked about last week, was recommended, and several other candidates were as well. And I found out that they had a fundraising event back at the end of August, last Sunday of August at the Society's Clubhouse in Richmond. They invited these politicians and a few others from the 3 municipalities to come together for a donation ceremony. The society had raised $26,000 from its members, and they did grip and grins with larger-than-life checks. And the candidates got a chance to say a few words about their campaigns and what they would do if they were elected or re-elected. And I'm trying to find out, where did that money go? Chak Au, who's a Richmond City Councillor, he's running for re-election, told me that it was really just a photo op, and he denies any money has come into the Richmond Community Coalition Party office. I haven't got that yet from the financial agent, who I asked if the society tried to donate under its name, or if any of the directors of the society tried to donate under their own individual names. So they don't have to actually disclose the definitive lists until 3 months after Election Day. In Vancouver, the major parties, except for Coalition Vancouver and except for Vancouver First, have been publishing preliminary lists so we can get a bit of a handle on who their supporters are, who's writing the $1,200 maximum checks under this new regime, new reality. So we've got the situation where there's a bit of a cloud over the Richmond elections because of this vote buying attempt by the society, and because of its lobbying and fundraising activities. It's a society that is not uncommon. There's lots of these societies, kinsmen's associations or business associations, and a lot of them are very friendly to mainland China. This Wenzhou Friendship Society in Richmond actually displays the flag of both Canada and of mainland China above its main door, as well as a flag for its own society, and it promotes trans-Pacific trade and communication with mainland China, which is something that is finally getting some attention here in the mainstream media in British Columbia, is what is called the United Front Work Department. That is a division of the Chinese government through the Communist Party of China, which has a job to promote China worldwide in all the main population centers of the world and to influence what happens in those population centers. There's been a lot of coverage to this in the last several months, a year or so, in Australia, where they have woken up to the fact that the Chinese government is doing a bit of a silent invasion, buying up a lot of assets and doing whatever it can to influence politicians and keep a watch on the local Chinese communities. There's language in intelligence reports from Australia, the United States, and Canada that expresses deep concern for the work that United Front is doing to influence foreign populations and also to harass populations of people who have chosen to live in Canada versus China. This is something that those who are elected on October 20th might have to deal with more. This is something that our provincial and especially federal officials will have to deal with, this creeping influence from China, which, albeit an important trade and tourism partner, is not a country which is an ally of Canada, and it's not a democracy, and it's a country with serious human rights issues. There isn't freedom of speech, and there are serious problems right now going on in the Xinjiang province, the mostly Muslim province, where they've got some records of some non-governmental organizations and even the United Nations, but 1 million people who are being subject to quote-unquote re-education camps. That's how China is trying to deal with its fear of Muslims and terrorist attacks. No real evidence. There are people in Xinjiang, though, that would rather be out of China, just like a lot of people in Tibet would rather be out of China and have their own independent nation. So that's how the Beijing leadership is trying to quell dissent in Xinjiang, and that's been getting international media headlines. And here we are in this day and age with the elections coming up October 20th, with questions of what China is doing to influence those elections.
Is there any suspicion that this money might have come directly from the Chinese government and they won't have to disclose it until 3 months after the election? And should the law be changed that you have to name your contributors as the election campaign rolls out?
Well, that's a very good idea, to have real-time disclosure, daily disclosure, perhaps. I don't know if they could do it hour by hour. That'd be a bit of a task, but I don't think it's unreasonable to ask for day-by-day disclosure. The parties are now reminding their donors of the new reality, where they have to remind them that if you want to make a donation in British Columbia, provincially or municipally, it has to be as an individual. You've got to be Canadian or permanent resident, and you've had to live here a certain period of time. And that is a serious question, if there will be enough requests at the polls by the polling station captains at various municipalities, if they're going to actually just make sure people are Canadian citizens who do vote. And at the end of the day, Elections BC, when it does get the returns from the candidates and the campaigns, will they be doing spot audits of the campaign offices where there is a proliferation of donations from people with Chinese names, for instance? Will they be going in there and asking to see the actual donation checks and the underlying documentation to ensure that the people that did make those are either proud Canadian citizens or people that want to be Canadians through permanent residency? Will they be doing the same thing and asking the same question about in some municipalities where there are strong, American diaspora communities, they got to make sure that Canadians are the ones that are voting, because it's only open to Canadians to vote, and they've got to make sure that Canadians or permanent residents are the only ones that are actually making the donations, because it is a concern. In a proper democracy, you want to make sure that it's the people who have the stake in the country now who have the right to vote and the right to make the donations, and you want to be above and beyond foreign interference, because that's another form of lobbying. That's another way that foreign government can get what it wants by lobbying the politicians. We see that every year at the Union of BC Municipalities Convention, where the local Chinese consulate is the only international sponsor of an event. They have a hospitality event at the Union of BC Municipalities Conference, where they essentially give a lecture about what's new in China and why the local municipalities should care, the elected officials and the staff. And this is no surprise that it's happening, because Vancouver is a very important port city. There are a number of port cities up and down the West Coast, but there's not one like Vancouver, because Vancouver is the closest major port metropolis to China when you look at the air routes, and it's important for trade. And of course, you do have a very large ethnic Chinese population, and China is trying to influence a lot of countries around the world. It's been bullying airlines, for instance, airlines that insisted on calling Taiwan in their in-flight magazines. China has been going up and down a list and telling airlines not to refer to Taiwan as Taiwan in their in-flight magazines, for instance. And there's major concerns in Hong Kong about Hong Kong's independence under the one country, two systems regime that happened since 1997 under the handover deal with United Kingdom. Well, there's been major erosion in that area in recent years, and there's even a journalist from the Financial Times who did not have his visa renewed in order for him to report in Hong Kong anymore, because the excuse was that he moderated a press club debate where one of the debate participants suggested that Hong Kong should actually go independent. And of course, that didn't make people very happy in Beijing. So a lot of things happening on both sides of the Pacific, and a lot of questions on how we are in this global village relating back and forth with China, which has become as much of an important partner in trade and tourism since the 2008 economic meltdown as the United States, which is our nearest ally and nearest partner. So this is something to watch over the next 4 years.
Well, the U.S. is also withdrawing from international organizations, and whenever there's a vacuum, somebody usually steps in to fill it. Are the Chinese taking advantage of that?
Oh, absolutely. I think they're trying to take advantage of Canada's love-hate relationship with the United States. They know that the United States and Canada are two countries which are more alike than most in the world, even though there are differences in subtle areas in culture and in some areas of commerce. But when Donald Trump decides to have or reorder the trade deal with Canada and Mexico to try to bring some advantage back to the United States, and when there is a bit of a conflict between the President of the United States and the Prime Minister of Canada, as there has been this year, there's been a bit of war of words, then you can see how China is looking at that and saying, well, they're having a bit of a tiff there. What if we be, kind and gentle and cuddle up with little Canada, and see what we can do to come closer to them? And that's already happening. There's been talk off and on about a free trade agreement, which, way back when there was in the 1980s the whole debate over free trade with the United States. Well, it's a whole other ballgame when you're talking about free trade with China, and you can probably make a free trade agreement all you want, but when you're talking about Canada with 37 million people, dealing with an economy of about 1.3 billion people, an economy that is not based on transparency, economy where there is no freedom of the press to report on what's happening with the economy, an economy which in China the leadership there prefers to have it on their own terms. So, could a free trade agreement ever really work between a small population country like Canada with lots of natural resources that China, of course, wants and needs, could that ever really work? Especially in a country like China, which has a well-known poor reputation for upholding intellectual property standards.
We'll have more with Bob Mackin right after this.
Grand Portage Resources recently completed the 2018 drill program on its 100% controlled Herbert Gold Discovery property located in the prolific Juneau Belt in southeast Alaska. Drill results are expected through late 2018. Past drill results included numerous multi-ounce gold assays on multiple veins. Grand Portage trading symbols are GPG on the TSX Venture, GPTRF on the OTCQB, and GPB on Frankfurt. For more information, please visit our website, grandportage.com.
I'm Kelly Jennings, CEO of Powerband Solutions. Powerband is a cloud-based provider of auction, inventory, and finance solutions that make buying, selling, and financing vehicles more efficient. Powerband Solutions trades on the TSX Venture Exchange symbol PBX and on the OTCQB symbol PWWPF and on Frankfurt symbol 1ZV. For more information, please visit us at powerbandsolutions.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Bob Mackin. Bob, is it true that union members have been told they will be compensated if they do volunteer work for Kennedy Stewart, who's running for mayor of Vancouver?
Yep. QP Local 15, which represents the inside workers at the Vancouver City Hall and Vancouver Park Board and also a couple of Eastside Community Centers, sent out a memo the Monday before the election to encourage their members. It was an urgent memo, and it was a great opportunity, that's what it said, to take some time off work and get reimbursed for doing so by going and working inside one of the campaigns to either knock on doors or answer phones or do other sorts of things to help the Vancouver and District Labour Council endorsed candidates. The top of the list, of course, is Kennedy Stewart running for mayor, to help those candidates get over the finish line and become the winners of the October 20th election in Vancouver. This is part of a loophole or a gray area, whatever you want to call it, that the NDP left open, maybe even left open deliberately. We don't quite know yet. They could have made a stronger law, but they didn't, and so these kind of things are happening. And the political opponents for the labor slates can definitely be unhappy with this, that the Vancouver District Labour Council seem to have looked for any which way to stay within the bounds and not run afoul of it, while still trying to raise money or get in-kind workers. Vancouver District Labour Council, of course, also is a registered third party, and there are certain limits there to advertising, but there may not be limits to other types of expenses. So they're doing whatever they can to find a way to make it happen, and find a way to embarrass those on the right side of the political spectrum. The NPA, when there is an NDP government in Victoria, the tradition has been for there to be a right-of-centre party in power in Vancouver, and that's not that may not happen. This may be the end of that trend, because the left is united, but the right is not. There's a lot of fragmentation. The NPA has lost members and candidates to a variety of other parties, and some of them have gone independent as well. So you've got a number of parties, Coalition Vancouver, Vancouver First, Yes Vancouver, which are running against the NPA, and in some cases you got to wonder, are they running against the NPA, or are they running with the goal in mind to win City Hall? So you've got this infighting, which could definitely lead to Kennedy Stewart walking in to City Hall after a win on Saturday, according to the opinion polls. But you've got this situation where the Vancouver District Labour Council might be making people on the right side of the political spectrum a little bit envious, because if the right had united like the left had united back in the spring, this could be a very different election. If there are fewer candidates on the right for people to choose from, better organized campaigns, better funded campaigns, then it would be more of a dogfight between the NPA and the progressive or left-wing elements who now are regularly represented by Kennedy Stewart. Although on the center left there is also Shauna Sylvester, an independent who is a former Vision Vancouver board member, who could also spell problems for Kennedy Stewart, could erode some of his base, depending on how organized she is on getting out the vote, which could in turn help someone on the right side of the political spectrum, possibly Ken Sim of the NPA. We'll see where all the vote falls, but of course, with the weather forecast being the way it is, there will be no excuse for people to not get out. They may even have to put some sunscreen on to get out to vote, which would not be a bad thing.
First time that's happened in decades, I would think.
Yeah, well, we've got an earlier election this time. Elections for municipalities have been traditionally in about mid-November, but we got it here in later October before Halloween. And there's been a lot of concern about this campaign, which has been dogged by the housing issue, which of course needs to be discussed, and we need to find solutions to the housing crisis. But at the same time, does anyone in this crop actually have a solution, or are they all just throwing ideas out there, spitballing it? There are concerns that the election finance rules have caused there to be less money spent, which means less profile for the candidates and their parties and their issues, as well as less profile for the election entirely. So could there be some people who are just not engaged in municipal politics, the kind of people that should be paying more attention to municipal politics, getting confused and frustrated? In Vancouver, there's 21 people running for mayor and 71 running for city council. There's 10 seats on city council, so 61 people will be losers. And, there's got to be some sort of reform in the future to maybe decrease the number of candidates through a runoff or preliminary vote in the spring, perhaps. So we'll see how it all happens on October 20th, Election Day.
We'll have more with Bob Mackin after the break.
MGX Minerals is revolutionizing the new energy economy with patented lithium extraction technology, replacing traditional solar evaporation using low-cost, low-energy nanofiltration. The first system of this paradigm shift technology is currently being commissioned. MGX Minerals trades on the CSE, symbol XMG, the OTCQB, symbol MGXMF, and Frankfurt, symbol 1MG. For more information, visit our website, mgxminerals.com.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Bob Mackin. Bob, one of the candidates in Surrey is denying any links to a businessman who was acquitted in the Air India bombing. Can you tell us about that?
Indeed, it's been kind of an ugly campaign out in Surrey as Tom Gill tries to keep Surrey First in power, the party of Diane Watts and then of Linda Hepner. Well, he's the heir to that. And one person showed up at one of his campaign events, and the photograph was posted on social media, and there's also a Punjabi news report that showed Rapudaman Singh Malik sitting in the center of a room at a table listening intently to Tom Gill. And Rapudaman Singh Malik is a name that people, especially in the Punjabi community, it draws strong emotions because he was one of two people who was found not guilty in 2005 of that long trial about the Air India bombings from 1985 that killed 331 people, the biggest, worst terrorist incident in Canadian history. And the person that police thought was one of the masterminds of that walked free. And he's been a controversial figure ever since. He has caused a little bit of controversy here and there. For instance, when he visited the Khalsa school. He's involved in the Khalsa school and the Khalsa Credit Union. When he visited the Khalsa school in South Vancouver back in 2010, Mayor Gregor Robertson was there, and in the same photo, so there were people in the Punjabi community and the mainstream community as well that were saying, why is the mayor involved in a photograph with someone who has a reputation like Malik, even though he was found not guilty, was acquitted of those charges. There was enough evidence that came out of that court long court hearing that seemed to point in the direction of guilt, but again, justice said no. And then there was also the case of Malik, Ruputbin Singh Malik, going to the Khalsa school in 2011 when Wei Young, the Vancouver South Conservative candidate at the time, was there. She was trying to beat Ujjal Dosanjh, the Liberal, and Malik had actually endorsed Wei Young to the teachers and the parents at that school. So that caused a lot of problem at the time. Ujjal Dosanjh spoke out against it, and a lot of negative press for Wei Young at the time in 2011, but she did get elected, and now she's running for mayor of Vancouver. And an earlier story we talked about, of course, was the Canada-Wenju Friendship Society situation there. She seems to be a bit of a magnet for controversy, walking straight into the hornet's nest wherever she's running for election. So, yeah, Ruputbin Singh Malik was at the Tom Gill event, but Tom Gill's people tried their best to distance themselves from him. And they said that Tom Gill, he attends dozens of events, different events, organized by individuals, community groups, and they say it's impossible for him to personally know everyone who might attend, and that he was not aware of Malik's attendance at any particular event. I asked if there was any donation received by Surrey First from Ruputbin Singh Malik. They said that they're confident they have not had a campaign contribution. Norman Stowe, who is the spokesperson for Surrey First, said he was expecting to get more information by Monday. I haven't heard from him since, so I don't know if there is a donation from Ruputbin Singh Malik or not. Again, it's all voluntary now. The smart campaigns, the ones that really really have their eyes on the prize and want to be transparent, are the ones that are telling us now. Surrey First has decided not to release its donations list at the time, for the time being. They will have to report it to Elections BC, which will then release it to us, and we'll see definitively whether Ruputbin Singh Malik put money into the Surrey First campaign or any other campaign in Surrey or the Lower Mainland.
Isn't Norman Stowe connected to a big public relations firm?
Yes, he's the head of the PACE Group, the PACE Group, which is a public relations and lobbying firm, and that's the firm where Hector Bremner, who is running for mayor of Vancouver, worked. The PACE Group spun off when Norman Stowe left BC Pavilion Corporation a couple of decades ago, and was the PR firm for the Molson Indy Vancouver for so many years, and they enjoyed the BC Liberal dynasty. They got a lot of work from the BC Liberals, a lot of work on Olympic-related projects, and they represent some big-name individuals. Norman Stowe has been a media trainer for Francesco Aquilini, for instance. They're also, advisors to various other developers and do one-off projects as well. And public events like the cycle race in Gastown every year. It's he's trying to adapt to the new reality of not having the BC Liberal lifeline as the NDP is now in power. He's also been in other political campaigns. The PACE Group was representing Kevin Falcon back in 2011 in that leadership campaign for the BC Liberals, the one that ended with Christy Clark winning. And we found out years later it was in controversy. There were a lot of whispers at the time of stolen PIN numbers being used by people that may not have been members of the BC Liberal Party. Well, a court hearing earlier this year confirmed that there was that happening, that the police found evidence of voter irregularities. And as I reported in the Breaker.News, one of the people that was working in the Christy Clark campaign was Hector Bremner, now running for mayor. He did receive an email from Harry Bloy, Christy Clark's only supporter in caucus, and that email, 2 emails, contained 99 PIN numbers. We just don't know what happened after those PIN numbers ended up in Hector Bremner's email box. He did not respond to my many requests for comment by both email and phone. So that's a mystery that we don't know if ever will be solved.
Bob, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Thank you.
My guest has been investigative reporter Bob Mackin. He's an award-winning investigative reporter. He's the publisher of the Breaker.News. His website thebreaker.ca. If you have any questions for Bob or any of our other guests, you can send them to info@howstreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard. Thanks for listening.
Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. The Goddard Report is available online and mobile at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. The Goddard Report is a production of How Street Media Incorporated.